Greetings, I'm Professor Frederic Fol Leymarie, working at Goldsmiths, University of London in the UK, and also co-founder of London Geometry in London, which is involved in helping create this particular exhibition. I want to present some ideas, some answers to questions you may have about the exhibition. So in particular, to summarize, what is this exhibition about? For me, it's essentially a journey through the evolution of computer art, very largely speaking, computer art involving all kinds of technologies, including the use of robots, from its origins in the 1960s all the way to current day and current practices. What kind of experiences and inspiration, different from traditional media, could you hope to have by coming to this exhibition? I think one important point is to understand the already very significant history of computer art. This may not be familiar to all our visitors. So in the exhibition, you'll have an important part of the exhibition, which is walking you through different steps in the history of computer art, starting from the 1960s. You have some examples here on the right-hand side of some of the pioneers from that era. Some of them are still practicing active artists today, such as Paul Brown. The exhibition is not just about the history, but also about what's happening today in the world of art and technology. So we'll get a sort of overview of what is possible to do today in the present, and you'll get ideas and inspiration of what should happen or what may happen in the near future by coming to the exhibition at Taikang Art Museum. What sort of experience you can have of a particular artist's work? And does that work better if you're on site at the museum rather than, for example, searching through the internet and looking at some visual renditions? The thing is, by being in the exhibition, you'll have a complete overview of the past 70 years of creativity, human creativity, engaging with the most advanced technologies of the day throughout all these years. Not only that, you'll be exposed to many media, many types of outputs, many ways of creating and rendering the works. You'll have examples of drawings, of paintings, videos. You'll have text documenting the history, documenting the artist and their works. Some of the works presented are interactive. Some of the works are through machines and robots. And some of them will be at the exhibition. So overall, you have to come to the exhibition, I think, to fully experience the beauty of the art produced, the interest of the evolution that has already taken place in the last 70 years, and also to be exposed to the diversity of what has happened and what is possible today. Can I give you viewing tips? different ways perhaps you could experience the exhibition. I think in the beautiful space that we have at Taikang Art Museum, there are many ways to experience the art. One way could be to follow the history, starting with the most early works and progressing towards the most recent ones. Or you could go the other way around, perhaps in a second pathway, to be able to relate the progress that has been made, or the, rather than progress, perhaps the diversity of explorations. Or perhaps you want to experience particular types of outcomes. Maybe start with the interactive aspects. Maybe spend time reading the text produced for you, and then spend time with the actual art pieces. And I think this is the kind of exhibition that one can benefit from visiting more than once. Once you've been exposed a first time, it's a lot to take in. And I would imagine that coming back, you'll have a very different type of experience and time for a different type of appreciation of, again, the diversity that's on stage. Other reasons to come to Taikang Art Museum for the Creative Machine exhibition. It will be the occasion to discover artists from the past 8 decades. We're talking from the early 60s, 1960s, all the way to today. And different ways of engaging with computer art, as I mentioned before. Also of interest is that most of the works are being shown physically for the first time in China. So it is a unique experience for most of you who will come to the exhibition. Going back to the diversity of work, it's also a particular mix of the art and artists selected by the curation team, which includes myself, Professor Leymarie, and the team at Taikang Art Museum. And I think by the end of your visit, I hope at least, you will get a deeper understanding of how art, technology and science, modern, current technologies and science engage in fruitful ways with artistic creativity. More specifically, why would such an exhibition be of interest to the younger ones, the younger amongst you? Well, children of today will grow up in this new artificial intelligence era that we've just entered. And it's really just the beginning of that particular era in AI development. We can feel it, we can hear about it in the media. Every other day there's a new progress made in particular type of tool being made available. It could be a chat box, it could be a visual production system providing new capacities. It could be a new ways of creating videos. Soon we'll have ways of creating sculptures, 3D renditions. Perhaps having implications in architecture, in design. This is all happening now, but especially will happen in the future. So for the children growing up today, I think this exhibition gives you a great opportunity to understand why is this happening now? What was the beginning of all this? the history, the recent history that lead us to today, but also it will open up your imagination and make you think about what might be possible in the near future, where you, as a child or a teenager, you today will become one of the actors tomorrow in that space, in that new field. Also, I think you'll get a sense of how these new tools and technologies that are being introduced can be combined with more traditional ways of creating art. For example, calligraphy. For example, painting, as the example we see here on the right, with Harold Cohen a few years ago and his wonderful robotic system, AIkon, collaboration between the human and the machine. What will happen in the near future? What you, young of today, the youth of today, what will you produce in the near future? Remember, humans are always capable of extending their creative capacity. This is one of our distinguishing features. Think of all other animal species. We are the creative species. If we want to think of what distinguishes us from the rest of nature, I would say it is our creative potential. But why does this happen? What is the potential of computer art? Why did people, artists, scientists, 70, 80 years ago started to use computers as soon as they were produced and explore artistic potential? Well, if you think of the history of art, there are many examples of artists, modern artists of the day, engaging with the newest technology of that time or the newest science. Artists and scientists are always interested in creativity, imagination. What could be done with these new ideas, these new scientific results, these new technologies? I can think, for example, as a concrete example of photography. Go back to the 19th century, to the 1850s, 60s. Photography becomes a new way of creating imagery, of recording what's happening in the world. Initially, it's mostly a technology, it's developed, it's refined, but very rapidly it becomes an art form, or part of a new art form. Initially, in the first few years, the art world is skeptical, doesn't think this is valuable, valid art form. But as the new artists of the day engage more and more fully with the potential of this new technology, the art form is recognized, so much so that in the 20th century, photography becomes a new form of art recognized that you can experience in museums, for example. Another example would be film, which is the animated version of photography. And so today, computer art is a similar evolution. And the use of AI in computer art is also a similar step. Artists of today and of the recent past will want to explore the potential of these new means. And this is true of robotics as well. So this thirst for creativity, for exploring new possibilities, is allowing all of us, observers, practitioners, to expand our human experience. And this is really what's at the core of an artistic practice and the motivation of an artist. It's to explore and push further existing boundaries. Exploring the art as it was done 2000 years ago is interesting. It's fascinating to relate with the past. But exploring new possibilities, what has never been explored before, you can imagine it's also very exciting. Perhaps even much more interesting, at least for some of the artists of today and of the past. And interestingly, this is a very similar motivation that you find in science, scientific disciplines, or engineering disciplines. We are fascinated and excited to explore new possibilities. So now I want to move on to a slightly different type of subjects, artificial intelligence itself, and in particular, what kind of impacts are these new developments having on humanity? And here I'm sort of thinking as a scientist rather than taking the artistic point of view as I did before. In terms of impacts, I think we all need to be very aware of what the technology implies. It is not neutral like any technologies. It has benefits and it has difficulties, problems it may create. It's not all rosy, if you want. We have to be careful as we move forward. We have to look at impacts. In particular, I think we need to think about the real economics of what developments in AI imply. And as we move into developing more and more sophisticated systems, this may become one of the main area of concern that we have. So in terms of real economics, we always have to consider inputs and what comes out of developing such new technology and systems. In the case of AI, we should think about resources, both human, people who develop the systems need to be qualified. It's a huge involvement. But there's also natural resources that are being used, that are needed. We need sophisticated computers. They're made of all kinds of materials. They're running on energy, typically electricity. And if we look at the recent developments, the use of electricity and energy for having the system perform better and better is increasing rapidly, and these numbers are significant. So here you have some results, very recent, from the World Economic Forum, and you have estimated electricity consumption related to the training and running these AI systems. And you can see some prediction. So in dark blue, you see sort of the growth that's expected in consumption over different main regions. So United States or North America, European continent, and China. And then some more specific countries. And these things can vary a lot per territories, depending how much involvement is put by a given region on developing these technologies. So we have to think about these impacts. And now that's more about the inputs. One aspect is objectives. Why do we develop these systems? What are they for? They can be used in many, many different ways. Let's think hard about what are the most useful ways. Perhaps we don't need to apply them to all kinds of applications, especially if they have such impact in terms of resources. And then there's the outcomes. We have some ambitions, some objectives, but are the outcomes, the applications, in line with the initial objectives. What are the overall impacts on the environment and on society? If we think of energy, of course, it can have important impacts, and we may want to reduce these or control those, or be careful at least. And in terms of applications, it can have impacts at the cultural level, definitely at the educational level, in terms of commercial exchange, trade, in terms of scientific developments, etc. So we need to really examine what is possible to do with AI. And it's not all about the positive impacts. We have to consider some other types of impacts as well. Going back to now the impact of AI, more specifically in terms of artistic creation, there are also different issues we should consider. So of course, there is the sort of very positive type of applications or impacts, which is the emergence of new practices or modifying past practices in interesting ways. And this sort of impact into novelty is really driven by the artists who engage with the technologies. So the artist is driving the agenda here. But it's not just about the individual artist. These technologies are also impacting the creation more largely in the commercial world, in designs, for example, in films, in advertising, in literature, creating text to document. And this can be done to some extent at an accelerated pace. What are the implications of that on the workforce, for example? Can we train carefully people to engage with these technologies and be perhaps even enjoying more their work and at the same time perhaps being more productive? Of course, AI represents a new technological frontier for the artist to engage with. But that doesn't mean that every current modern artist needs to incorporate a particular type of AI technology or robotics technology in their practice. One thing that's great about the way humans engage with creative practices is the diversity. And so you shouldn't be surprised if you see some artists adapting a piece of technology for a completely different purpose than the original objective of the technology. Or maybe they'll use AI to criticize AI or criticize its use in society. That's definitely a valid use for artists to engage with. Or maybe an artist would simply reject the technology. It's not of interest to them, and that's fine. It's always been the case. We've always seen a vast diversity of engagement in art practices. I don't expect this to change at all. We're basically augmenting the number of possibilities to engage with creative practices. We're not here to reduce it. And still, there are, as some of you may have realized in the media, there are issues with some of the AI technologies in particular that are produced, serious issues with intellectual property and copyrights. And the classic example here is the development of a system where the AI system is trained on existing art outcomes by particular artists. And this is not necessarily done considering the ownership of what was being produced by the artist. So there is some gap there, and the gap tends to be at the level of legal concerns And this needs to be, again, considered very carefully. And I think this is an area where we need agreements at an international level as well as national level. Probably starts at the national level first. We figure out how should we deal with these issues of ownership of the creativity aspect, and then reach some sort of agreement across nations. I hope this will happen very soon, because the technology is already there, is already having impacts, and will have more impacts in the near future. Another very interesting question that probably you've considered yourself. Will AI make everyone an artist? What do we mean by an artist, being an artist? Well, my own answer is not really, I don't think so. Because an artist is someone who decides to engage fully with a practice, with a medium. They have little time for engaging with other activities. Or they may engage with so-called a job to sustain themselves, but this is not their passion. The passion is the art practice. No, this is not for everybody. It hasn't been the case in the past. I expect it to be the same in the near future and the present. Then artistic practice at the professional level, you need some recognition. How do you obtain recognition from others? It's largely because you engage at a passionate level deeply. And you put into it your life experience, your desires, your ideas. It becomes a unique type of practice. So again, I think this is not for everybody, and I would think that AI is just, again, a way to explore novelty, a new way to explore novelty in artistic practice. But on the other end, it is true that we are all artists at some point in our life, or we have all the potential of engaging with the art in a passionate way. And if I think of any of us when we are a child, a young child, we are very passionate about artistic practices. We will build things with materials, let's say Lego pieces or pieces of wood. We will put rocks together. We will draw things. We will learn about shape by drawing things. We will paint. We will color things. We will explore how to use our body and do gestures, and then refine these gestures. So I take the view that we are all artists when we're born. Again, I see creativity, our potential for creativity, including in artistic sense, as a key defining feature of who we are as humans. So this is already part of us. We don't need AI to be an artist. But becoming an artist as a professional is a different thing. It will be, for some of us, a way to grow up and create a career for ourselves. And then there is an interesting aspect of AI, is that I think is that it brings tools that are sophisticated, and I think there is an opportunity there for some of us as adults who may not have continued to engage with artistic practice since our childhood, to perhaps being pulled back into the great world of artistic creativity. So there is some potential there. We will see what happens in the next few years. And considering now more specifically how AI impacts artistic creation, at least at the moment, in present time, for me, who is a computer scientist acting in this world, I see AI methods and systems as a new category of tools, sophisticated tools, that can be used by artists, by humans, in their creative explorations. This is the main aspect of how AI is impacting artists today. I don't see art produced by AI systems on their own as being interesting from an, say, curator or observer point of view. Why do I say that? Because those systems we create are still artificial, in the sense that they lack what some of us call agency. Agency is a property that animals in particular have. We have desires, we have emotions. It's linked to our build-up with our biology, with our biological body. We have personal goals that we want to achieve at different times in our lives. The systems we're talking about, AI or robotic, have not been designed with such objectives. And in fact, we wouldn't know yet how to go about designing such faculties into such systems. Simply because if we go back to the science side, we're still learning about these aspects of who we are. It's very early days in that sense, to describe, to understand what is an emotion, what is a desire. This is an open area of thinking and research. It is too early to think that AI and robotic systems are ready to experience such faculties. At least this is how I see it, how I understand the current world of AI and robotics. And then also the quality of what's considered an art piece remains in the eye of the human. This topic of aesthetics or appreciation is one of these difficult faculties that we don't fully understand. Hence, it is too early to think that anything like that has been studied well enough to be simulated or built in any of our most sophisticated systems to date. And what we call art, in the end, is to be meaningful to humans. Notice, for example, that the current AI systems we talk about when we talk about artificial neural networks, they are trained on information and data qualified by humans. It is meant, the outcomes are meant to be appreciated by humans. So, for the final part of this presentation, I will answer some questions that are more personal about my own work, my own experiences in this area of mixing technologies with art. So in particular, I've been involved in one of the works that you will see in the exhibition, works by Patrick Tresset. I was involved in the early phase with Patrick, when Patrick joined us at Goldsmiths, University of London. He took some of my classes, and then we started to work together, think about ideas of how to engage his own art practice with the technologies of the day. We're talking early years of 2005 to 2007. In the first period, together we engage in computer software and computer art. We develop some ideas, some approach to explore the way to render portraits in a style close to the style of Patrick. And this was computer art, digital only. A few years later, we re-engaged into a new project around 2009. And in 2010, you see an example here on the right of a version of the work we were exploring, a first version of a system called Paul the Robot, of which you will have more recent examples in the exhibition. And such kind of collaborations and works are explorations both in the scientific and the artistic world. So for myself, who is more sitting on the science side of things, these types of explorations help me better understand how humans function. In particular, my background is in computer vision. How do we use vision to understand the world? Working with visual artists allows me to understand some aspects of how we use vision. And, for example, how we recognize objects, faces, with very few lines. If we look at the rendering performed by some artist, with very few lines you can give the essential of the face of someone you know and recognize them from those few lines. This tells us something about how the human brain functions. And this is fascinating to me. And it's by working with artists and collaborating with them, understanding how they think about visual representation, that we may get some new understanding into how the brain functions. So this is motivation from the scientific side. From the artistic side, we go back to some of what I was saying before. It allows the artists to extend their artistic practice, their creativity, explore new ways of expressing themselves. And then the works themselves as performances engage at other levels, for example, philosophical levels. Here, this type of work, I think, from Patrick Tresset is interesting from many different ways. One way in particular is it questions, what is it to be a human? We have built these sophisticated systems to act as ways that resemble what humans are known for, what makes them specific. I think as an art piece, such work creates interesting questions for us to try to answer. What is it to be human? What makes us unique? Other questions of interest, to me more specifically. How do we integrate new science, new technologies into the art and humanities? Obviously, I sit at the university and I'm teaching, I'm creating courses. Integrating AI or computer graphics into a typical computer science curriculum is obvious. It's a natural thing. But how do you do it in the arts and humanities? So you have to think about new ways of engaging both with the arts or the humanities, say the history, say the philosophy, say the psychology, and combine those fields with these new technologies and new science. And really you learn of how this can work by doing, by practicing, by creating courses, by testing them with some guinea pig students, let's say, who give you feedback and they make you think again about how to modify, perhaps make the content and the delivery more useful, more interesting. if you have in your class people with a very different background, let's say a background in art or design, you have to adapt your language, you have to adapt the content. But experience shows that this is definitely feasible, and we have been, in our particular case, successful in creating such new programs over the past 2 decades. And then, of course, there are examples of others who have done the same steps. And similarly to the engagement of artists with technologies, we have examples of courses engaging with arts and humanities, mixing computing with those disciplines, at least also since the origin of computing entering the classroom at least at the university level in the 60s. Now, more specifically about impacts on my own research and practice, engaging in this way, mixing these disciplines, has allowed me to rediscover, in a way, things that I knew when I was a child, but I sort of forgotten as an adult. Rediscover the importance of artistic creation in learning. So again, I did say my sort of scientific focus is in computer vision, understanding the world through vision. And there's a close connection between how we think visually about the world and how we experience the world by moving through the world, by touching the world, by re-representing the world. And artistic creativity is a mean to connect these different ways of experiencing the world. And this has been playing a big role in my scientific explorations in the past, I would say 15 years or so. And also in general, not just for me as a scientist, but for other scientists, for other people are interested in understanding how humans behave. Engaging with artistic creativity is an excellent way to get new understanding on human perception and human intelligence. And since I'm on the topic of art and science, I've been talking a lot about how technology is used by artists, how art can impact some of our understanding of humans, but there are other ways in which art and science intersect. And I just wanted to emphasize such ways to conclude. So here you have some examples of visualization and animations of molecular data. So what you see here is a view from inside of a virus, and you can perceive some structures here in different colors. Each of them is a different protein. So this is a molecular construct that's created by reading some of the DNA that's present in each of your cells. And viruses have a way to create these proteins. And here we're visualizing and putting the scientist or the artist or the observer directly immersed inside a virus, where you can study and experience the construction of the virus itself. And this needs to be done in some abstract way, and this is where the art comes into play. What do you show? How do you show the structures? These are all artistic decisions. And of course, there's a conversation between the artist and the scientist, so that it is comprehensible and useful for the scientific domain. Another area where there's been lots of interaction and recent progress is in the visualization and animation of the interior of a cell. And you have snapshot here from a recent work by Gal McGill in Ingersoll and a little startup company called DigiZyme. The interior of a cell is full of smaller pieces of life, full of substructures, full of molecular structures. Of course, it also has DNA in the case of our cells, for example. And this is being read by other molecular structures called ribosomes. And in that process, new structures called proteins are constructed. So not only it is diverse and dense, how do you represent that? What do you make obvious? What colors to use? What patterns to use? These are all artistic decisions. And on top of it, it's dynamic. It's changing all the time. So you need to animate. Again, artistic decisions are useful in that context. And we could go on and look at different fields where art and science come together in other ways than the one we've explored in the exhibition. Another important way would be astronomical data, and there are many such other application domains, and I invite you to search and research those. And I hope that the exhibition at Taikang Art Museum, the Creative Machine exhibition, will inspire you and will inform you about what has happened, what is happening now, what may happen in the future. And I hope it will, for some of you, put you on a track to become yourself an artist of the new wave, or a scientist that engaged with the artistic side. Thank you. Enjoy the exhibition.